Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us this morning for our first online session. We're going to start in a minute or so when I hand over to Amy, who's a partner and social trainer at Social Bee, to get going. But just a few housekeeping points first. This is our first webinar, and whilst we have checked and tested as much as we can, if we do have any technical issues as we go along, please be patient. We'll try and sort them out as soon as possible, but hopefully we won't have any. Also, to the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a sidebar. So we will leave the chat open. So please feel free to communicate or pop any comments in there. As always, we'd appreciate them to be PG-13. And as well as that, questions. Should you have any questions about anything that Amy's going to run through, please send them to us via the questions tab and we'll go through them at the end. We've allotted about 20 minutes towards the end for questions, so hopefully we'll get through as many as we can. Added to that, we'll be doing some polls. So when we send them live, please do get involved. It just helps us read the room and understand what's happening within the audience. And added to that, also, if you have any feedback or any questions for us at the end of the webinar, we're going to pop some polls in just to get your feedback. And if you have any ideas as we start to move forward with producing more of these sessions about what you'd like to see more of, again, please just let us know. So I'm now going to hand over to Amy to start the session. Amy, over to you.
Morning, everybody. Lovely to be here. Always a little bit bizarre when I can see myself. I can't see any of you. You can all see me, but it's what you do when you're a digital marketing trainer. I'm getting used to it, certainly over the course of the last few weeks. So welcome to the presentation today, which is how to build an online community with social media. Just to give you a little bit of background about who I am and who we are as an organisation. As you know, as Susie's introduced me, I work for, morning Tracy, I work for Social Bee. And you can see on here some of our clients. Personally, I've worked with some of these as well. So I've worked with Visa, Superdry, Boohoo. You can see there's obviously some big names on there, but we also work with a lot of different sizes of organisations, a lot of different people who work in different industries. One of the beauties of what we do within digital marketing is that the principles apply no matter what. So some of those principles and some of those things we're going to be talking about as we go through, obviously, the slides for the next hour or so. So what will you leave with today? First of all, is the value of a social media community. So why you need it, why it's important, why it should be something that you think about. One of the things that we come across all the time as digital marketing trainers is that social media isn't about the media, it's about the social. And part of being social is obviously building yourself a community. We're going to look at how you can use social media to deliver a positive experience, to engage with your customers online. And we're going to look at some of the content and some content examples and some of the ways that you can do that to start conversations and to build a relationship with your customers. So you're going to be learning all of that. What you're also going to do, if you can hang around for us at the end, there's a couple of special offers from us here at Social Bee. So we've got those available for you as well. So by all means, please stick around at the end. There's a couple of great offers that I'd love to be able to share with you. One of the things that I'm going to do just to get everybody kicked off, get everybody a little bit involved, is if I can ask Suze to put up one of the polls for us, just so we can find out what kind of social media you're currently using out of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today. So please keep your eyes peeled on there and please do join in. So one of the things that I'm going to be really talking about in today's presentation is audience versus community and what that means, particularly with social media. Now, hopefully you can see on your screen some hieroglyphs, not what you would normally expect within social media. But the reason that these are here is really just to remind us that we've been communicating with symbols, with text for a really, really long time. And although obviously we've come a long way since then, the language that we use has progressed, it's really no different to what we were doing literally thousands of years ago. So it's important to always think about that when we communicate, we are still human, we're still doing exactly the same thing that we were doing all that time ago. We want to be able to leave our mark, we want to be able to build a community. Thousands of years ago, it was hieroglyphs. Now it's much more likely to be emojis. But it's still fundamentally the same thing. We're using a technology to be able to do that, so we don't have to carve it into stone. It's something that we can do obviously a lot easier because we have the technology to be able to do it. But what very often happens is that we adapt ourselves, we adapt who we are as an organization to fit the technology. And that's something that we really, really want to avoid. What you really need to be doing is thinking about, this is who we are as an organization, and what technology is available for us to be able to use to be able to put that message across. Because what you should really be doing at all times is thinking about your audience. So always thinking about what difference there is between audience and community. Audience is when you speak to people. Community is when they have a conversation back with you. So a little bit like today, you're my audience, but because I can't communicate, or you can't communicate back with me other than through the chat, it doesn't feel like there's as much of a community there. Social media is the perfect way of being able to balance that, to be able to have that way of being able to communicate and being able to talk to a larger audience, but also being able to build a community alongside that. So if we look at some of the social media platforms that we can use for that, and we'll start with Facebook. Arguably the biggest, arguably when you take into account the fact that Facebook also own Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, then they dominate. They're kind of the top 5 most popular platforms. 4 of those are owned by Facebook, so they very much dominate. 1.66 billion daily active users in 2020. These are some of the latest figures that we have. They're always a little bit slow to come out, but those are the latest figures that we have from early 2020. And realistically, at the moment, obviously, we're all in varying degrees of lockdown and varying degrees of being isolated from our face-to-face community, then all of our customers are hanging out there. So they're hanging out on social media platforms, they're hanging out online. We know they are. The figures that we're seeing in terms of the number of searches, the number of time spent online, all of those have soared over the course of the last few weeks. 500 million Facebook stories are accessed daily. That's a huge amount. And stories are one of the many ways that you can use to communicate with your audience. On average, a user accesses Facebook 8 times a day. I'll be honest, hands up, I probably access it a lot more than that. But as a digital marketing trainer, I do have a perfect excuse for it. I don't just play around on Facebook all day, which is probably what my kids think I do. And 7 million businesses use Facebook advertising, which is an indicator that that's where their audiences are. And it's always important to think about that in terms of where you are for your audience. Are you on the right platforms for your audience? And we're not talking about all of the different platforms today. We're only going to be talking about 3 of them. There are other platforms out there, but the most important thing is to remember that wherever you go fishing, you're only going to catch the type of fish you're looking for if you're fishing in the right pond for it. There's no point if you want to go shark fishing and fishing in a local lake, you need to go fishing in the ocean for it. So it's important to always think about that in terms of where are my audience and where is the best place for me to be able to find them, to communicate with them, to talk to them, and to build a relationship. One of the things on Facebook is that you have lots of different things that you can use for it. And the 2 biggest differences is obviously, are you a page or are you a group? Or do you need both, possibly? There's another poll that's going to be coming up in a couple of seconds, if Suze can put that up for me, with regards to what you currently use. Do you have a Facebook page? Do you have a Facebook group? Do you have both? Or do you have none? Are you not using them at all at the moment as a platform? The biggest difference between a page or a group is that a page is very much about your audience. So when we're talking about building a community, a page is much more of a broadcast. It's your shop window, if you like, your virtual shop window to your customers and your potential customers. And it's where people are likely to go to find out some more kind of top level information about you. Where are you? Contact telephone number, your address, a little bit about what it is that you do. It's also fairly discoverable within Facebook in that people can search for it as well. A group is a much more closed community. So you can have open groups, which means that anyone and everyone can join. You can have a closed group. So somebody has to answer some questions maybe to enter, or they have, you've got certain rules and regulations about that as to who you allow in and who you don't. Or you could have a secret group. Not discoverable, but can be a good way of using a VIP system for your customers, that it's by invitation only to make them feel that they're a really important part of your business. Realistically, for most businesses, you need both. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that your page is your shop window. Your group is your, like talking to a group of friends on a night out. They're people where you know you share common interests, you know that they have similar passions, similar outlook, you know that they're potentially interested in buying from you. The way I would describe it is that your page is like your shop window on a high street, lovely to look at, lots of people walk past, it might be really eye-catching, it might make people look at it. But as far as Facebook are concerned, that's all it is. It's simply an indication of like. With a group, what the group really gives you is a way of getting people to come through your door, to stand in your shop and to ask you what you've got on offer, what's the latest things that you're going to be introducing, what do you have in their size, all of those things. So it's all of those questions. And Facebook recognize that as well. So what Facebook do is that they are much more likely to show content within a group than they are within a page. Now, as well as working with Social Bee, I run a women's networking group called the Connections for Women in Business. Our page has very little engagement on it. It's not seen by a lot of people. We don't have a huge reach. We still manage it. We still maintain it. We've only got a small audience of about 500. But our group is much more about our community. It's where we share ideas. It's where we share recommendations. It's where we ask for help. It's where our members come to hang out with one another. It's where we get our most engagement and we get a much, much higher reach. At the moment, there's about 720 women in there, all women in business, all sharing, all connecting, all potentially able to do business with one another. So it works really well, but it's also given priority in the Facebook algorithm. So that's why if you've got a page, I would also definitely consider that you get a group as well, whether that's for VIP customers. This one that you can see here, this example, So Sally has a group that she uses that you're only allowed to enter once you are a customer. Yeah, so it's a little bit similar to ours in that our Connections for Women in Business group, you are only allowed to enter if you're a woman in business. We don't have a huge criteria for that, but as long as you're a woman, as long as you're in business, then you're more than welcome to join our group. But with this So Sally, what she does is you're only allowed to go in if you're a customer. So you're already feeling like you're a really important person. That's where she'll show products first. She'll share updates first, sales information, promotions, sneak peeks, all of those things to keep her audience interested in what it is that she has to sell. Looking at Instagram. Instagram has 1 billion active users in 2018. So obviously it's grown since then, we know it has. And more than 500 million daily users, so people logging in every day. 33% of the most viewed stories are from businesses. So if you're not currently using stories on Instagram, then I would definitely think about it. Instagram is as much about showcasing your products as it is about showcasing your brand values and the people behind your brand. So it's not just necessarily that picture perfect moment, which obviously is what it was designed for, but it's not just that picture perfect moment. It's not just that glimpse. It's also showing who you are. So particularly for small businesses, what people are interested in is doing business with you, not just about doing business with you as a brand. It's about them buying into you as well. What that also means is that you're much more likely to build a sense of community and audience within that because you're showing your real self, you're showing your real passions, you're showing how hard you work at what it is that you do. You're showing, sneak peeks. You're letting people feel that they're involved in your story. And really what Facebook and Instagram are about is about telling a story. So it's important to always think about that people want to buy into you as much as they do the products or the service that you sell. Obviously, one of the biggest downsides with Instagram is that it is very app-based. So it's not particularly desktop friendly. Because the vast majority of the users will obviously access it on an app. There is very limited functionality on the desktop, so there's not much point in using it that way. What's important with Instagram, though, is to always think about what your presence looks like, because unlike Facebook, where you tend to see posts in isolation unless somebody comes to your profile and goes through it all, with Instagram, that's kind of what it's all about. It's about clicking through onto your profile and seeing your grid. So your grid of information, your grid of products, your grid of updates, all of those things. And it's important to make sure that that grid looks right. And we'll have a look at that again in a sec. With Instagram, it is definitely worth mentioning that there are obviously a couple of new tools available for it. You can now schedule to Instagram from a couple of different platforms. So you can schedule to Instagram from platforms like Hootsuite, Buffer, those kinds of things. But you can also use Creator Studio for that as well. So with Creator Studio, what's really interesting with that is that you can schedule to Facebook, you can schedule to Instagram, you can link up all of your accounts if you work on more than one, and you can access some analytics as well, so you can run it from your desktop. And that's the biggest difference from a creator point of view, more than anything else, is that it means that you can access and post and look at your analytics from a desktop rather than just using a mobile, which when you work on Instagram can feel a little bit restricting and a little bit limiting, but it does allow you now to do that. It's only early days in terms of Creator Studio because it hasn't been around for that long, but the general evidence is that you're not penalised for simply pushing it from a third-party platform, which sometimes, anecdotally, if nothing else, a lot of businesses report that if they use a third-party scheduler like Hootsuite or Buffer, it can damage their reach sometimes. Whereas with Creator Studio, because it's built within Facebook, that doesn't seem to be the case. Instagram very much needs to reflect who you are as a brand. And obviously it is very much about the look. Although it doesn't matter if your backgrounds aren't picture perfect or if you're showing the kind of the real you, the real business, those kinds of things at the same time. That's all great. And, you know, they can be, your feeds can be friendly. They don't have to be highly stylized if that's not who you are as a business. With Instagram, it definitely needs to reflect your look, your tone, how your brand wants to be portrayed. This is an example from a company called Neon Marl. They're not a particularly large company, but they are very much about obviously the neon colors. So their feed is very bright, lots of that neon color reflected in that. And they use high quality images. You can get creative. It can be close-ups. It doesn't have to be just somebody wearing a product. It can be a close-up. It can be lifestyle. There's lots of different ways that you can do that, but it's important to find your particular look. Now, there are a couple of other companies at the moment that are doing this particularly well, and definitely within retail. And one of those is Aldi UK. So if you're on Instagram and you have a moment, then look at Aldi UK and have a look at how they build their feed, because what they've done with their feed is incredibly clever, because they've made it look like one big table. And as you scroll through, each picture, which works on its own and in its own right, connects together to make a lot of a much bigger picture. It's like one piece in a bigger jigsaw puzzle. So it's a really clever way of being able to connect your products, to be able to create that look online. And they, in my opinion, with Aldi, they really have absolutely just knocked it out of the park in terms of the look that they've developed. I recently ran a webinar where I asked people to say who they thought it was from. And I got Waitrose, Harrods, Fortnum & Mason. I got all of kind of like your higher brand type ones, if you like, because it looked so good. And people were really quite surprised when I told them that it was Aldi. So it's important to have that look around it. There's another company who I've done some work with in the past called Karen Davis Sugarcraft, who are also on Instagram. And again, their feed is, they stick to lots of the same colors, the same thing, but in several different angles to kind of connect up a bigger table, if you like, of images. With Instagram, you do need to make sure that you have switched your profile to a business profile. It's very easy to do in settings. It is literally just a toggle button. It isn't like Facebook where you have to start from scratch with a business account and lose everything and all the stuff that you've done to work for. But if you do switch it to a business profile, it will give you access to analytics. You can see followers, impressions, engagement. So you can see which Instagrams are working for you, which ones aren't. You can see when your audience is more likely to be online. You can see demographics around your audience as well. So whether they're male or female, what age they are, and all of those really useful information that then helps you to work out who your community is so that you can better communicate with them. And that's really what this is all about, is it's about finding what your audience is and then working out what they want you to talk to them about. With social media, what a lot of businesses do, and what we all tend to do at some point, is we fall into the category of we have something to say, so we're going to say it. We're going to broadcast it. We're going to talk about what we want to talk about because we have a message and we want to get out of that. We want to get that out of there. However, what social media really is, and the success of social media, comes with when you listen to what your customer wants to hear. And sometimes the message that your customer's ready to hear isn't the message that you're ready to share, which means there's a bit of a disconnect. And you just keeping shouting at them, it's a little bit like my kids, I guess. If I keep shouting at my kids, they don't listen to me, they tune me out. If I talk to them and I sit down and I talk with them, and I've got 4 boys at home at the moment during lockdown, so homeschooling and all the rest of it at the same time. Think, you know, I get that. I have done the shouting, I have done the quiet, and the quiet sit down and talk works a lot easier and a lot quicker. It's the same with communities on social media. I can broadcast how great I am, how fantastic I am, how much people should buy me, that they should buy now, all of those kinds of things. But actually me talking to them, having a conversation with them, asking questions, creating content that I know that they're going to find useful, they're going to listen to me an awful lot more. And building a community is all about listening both ways, about listening to what your audience wants you to talk about. And when you start talking about it, then listening and giving back for that. Pinterest. Pinterest is very often overlooked, and I'll be honest, it's one of my favorite platforms. I could talk about Pinterest for hours and hours. I love Pinterest. Pinterest is predominantly female, so just under 80% female in the Western world at least. So 79.5%, so just under 80%. Mainly mobile access, so lots of people use Pinterest as a second screen, so while watching TV, while out doing something else, and Pinterest is definitely my go-to for ideas, inspiration. I'm always changing the colour of my hair, I'm always planning my next tattoo. There's all kinds of different things that we use Pinterest for: parties, menus, discovery, because one of the things that Pinterest is more than just social media is that it's also a search engine. And it's a really quite powerful search engine as well, because regular pinners will go to Pinterest first before they go to Google. Yeah. And as you can see here, they're a very invested audience. So 47% of Pinterest users in the US log on to the site specifically to be able to shop. So they are looking to buy, they are in the market to buy, they're not just browsing, they are there to spend money. And they also tend to be quite a higher amount on there as well. So they'll spend more money and a higher average spend. Pinterest guided search, this is where it really comes in. It's not just a social media platform, it also works as a search engine. It's about exploration, it's about discovery. Pinterest in its very essence is aspirational and inspirational. So you can use it for your own research as well. So it's not just about your customers finding you, but about you finding the things that your customers are potentially interested in. So if, for example, you're a home accessories retailer, what kind of looks are people looking for? What pins are being repinned? What kind of color schemes there are? All of those kinds of things that you can be searching for and you can possibly be recreating with your products. The thing is with Pinterest and within the guided search is that when you, if you haven't already and you decide you want to create a Pinterest presence, or when you're looking at your current Pinterest account, what you need to think about is what else can I talk about other than just what it is that I do? So what else are your audience interested in? So if you, for example, supply stationery, yes, have a stationery board with all your stationery, but I'd also have a home office inspiration. Yeah, think about what your best buyers also have an interest in and create boards around that at the same time. So for example, with the Connections networking group again, it's one of the accounts that I'm obviously actively managing and working with, but one of the things with the Connections Pinterest board is that we have lots of different boards. So one of the boards that we have is the Inspirational Women. Now, when I've gone through our statistics, the Inspirational Women board pushes more people towards our website than any other pin that we've had on Pinterest. And last month generated more traffic than any other source did. So that was people looking for things that they had an interest in. Obviously, we're women in business, so it was inspirational women, quotes, those kinds of things. Found the content that was on our board, pinned it, and clicked through to our website to see what it was that we were doing. And Pinterest kind of sits really pretty much anywhere where you are providing B2C. It's predominantly B2C. So where you've got retail, where you've got jewelry, accessories, home, design, all kinds of different things that you can use it for. But obviously, if you can buy and people want to be able to click through to your website to buy in your e-commerce, absolutely you should be using it. As I said, I can happily talk about Pinterest for hours. I go to Pinterest because it's my happy place, where there's no Lego on the floor and there's a tidy lounge all the time and all of those kinds of things, because it's my aspiration, and I have a board of things that I will have at home one day. One's a climbing wall for my boys and one's an underground wine cellar. But it's those kinds of things that we're searching for. So when you create your boards, get creative and fun with them. You can see some examples here. Let your brand personality shine through. Set up boards with different colours on them if you're about design. Like I said, if you're a stationery supplier, set up one that's home office, inspiration, that's all different accessories, all those kinds of things that you know that your audience are potentially likely to be interested in as well. You can set cover photos for your brand, and again with this you need to make sure that you are a business account, because then you have access to your analytics. You have other access where you can have a featured board at the top, so you can kind of highlight the things that you really want to talk about. But it's about thinking about that variety of boards and things that people will be able to repin them. I've got a friend who runs a wedding organisation, and weddings are massive on Pinterest. And she doesn't sell dresses. She doesn't really have a lot of contacts in dresses, because she deals with the events, by which stage most people have made a decision about the dress. But her most popular pin that drives more traffic through to her website is a pin that talks about it's one that talks about what wedding dress is the best fit for your body shape. Doesn't sell wedding dresses, but it still drives traffic through for her. Make sure that your account has been switched to that business profile. Obviously, as I said, it gives you access to account insights, audience insights, your best ever pins, so you can see what your best ever one is, to get organic, paid and earned engagement. So how do you use all of those to engage with your customers? Social media content isn't just about you broadcasting. As I've said earlier, social media and social selling isn't about the media or the selling, it's about the social. So user-generated content adds authenticity. We like user-generated content. So encourage your customers to share something of them using your products or using a service or checking in or doing all of those kinds of things, and reward them if you feel you want to. There's an online company that I use fairly regularly. It's beauty and makeup, and there's a little card, a little present in the box, and that little card asks you to write a review, to share information, to share a picture of you opening it, to share your products, and then they put them in a gallery on their website. I have featured, just in case you were wondering. Upload images and videos. Videos are a really important way of being able to gain your customers' attention, because we like watching videos. By the end of this year, I think Google have estimated that over 75% of all online content will be video, partly because it takes up a bigger bandwidth, but also because it's all part of what we want and what we like. YouTube is one of the most popularly used platforms, and social media platforms. How to ... is the most common search on YouTube, because we use it for information, to make decisions, to figure out how to do something, how to make something, how to, whatever it is that you want. Cut hair, I think, is quite popular at the moment because of lockdown. So upload images and videos and use video. Use some of the tools within that as well. So things like your Facebook stories, where you can go live, Facebook stories, where you can, in Facebook and Instagram stories, where you can obviously include video in those as well. Share positive reviews and testimonials. Don't just share those. So if every time I come to your page, all I see is lots of people telling me how great you are, that's going to get really boring. But encourage people to do it. Encourage people to share the review, encourage people to put it on your Facebook page, encourage people to do it on your Google My Business. We take a lot of notice of reviews. I can tell you all day how amazing I am at social media training and how I can make a real difference for your business if you work with us and all of those things. But in reality, somebody who you don't know saying, I've worked with Amy and she was great, she really made a difference to my business, you'll believe them a lot quicker than you will believe me. Create surveys and polls to encourage participation. The more engagement you can get, the more your content is likely to be seen in the future. Start discussions, ask questions. Always a little bit daunting when you ask a question because you may get tumbleweed and nothing back, but it's always worth having those as part of your arsenal, if you like, of content. And really think about your content. What very often happens with businesses is that we start with content. We have a message that we want to get out there, so we want to talk about it. So we create content about it and we put it out across all platforms or channels. The problem with that is that you're not listening to your audience enough. It might not be the right timing for your content. Have you thought about whether it's absolutely perfect for your target market and for your super customer? Because that's who you should be creating content for, is your super customer who comes back to you, who buys from you on a regular basis, who recommends you, who shares your content on social media. They're the people that you should really be creating content for, because they're the ones who are your most prized customers. So does it meet their needs? Does the image match the content? Or have you just put something together quickly because you have a need to fill, you have a gap to fill in the calendar. You've got to Friday, you haven't put anything on all week, and you're just trying to put something together. Is it useful? Does it add value? Those are all questions that you should be asking. But content comes at the end of a very long journey of who's my audience? Am I on the right platform? What kind of content do they want? What am I trying to achieve? What does success look like to me? There's lots of questions that you can ask and should be asking before you just start creating content. Now, you can put content on more than one platform. Yeah, you can duplicate that content to a degree. What I would say to you is never, ever just duplicate content. So the one that goes out on Facebook, goes out on Instagram, goes out on Pinterest. I do a slightly different version on LinkedIn because I need to make it a bit more formal, but I don't change really anything. Same image, same message, same everything. That isn't going to work for you. What you need to do is to think about it slightly differently. And this is going to sound a little bit odd, but stick with me because I promise it makes sense at the end. So I have 4 children, and my 4 children all eat very different foods, all raised the same, all raised with exactly the same mum feeding them, but all have very different tastes. And as a mum and as a working mum, what I try and do is to minimize the amount of time I spend in the kitchen. I love baking, not a big fan of cooking. It's a chore for me. So what I always say to them is I have to have at least the main ingredient the same. So all of my children will have meatballs, for example. So meatballs are a big, 4 boys, they like meat, they like a lot of food. I get through an insane amount of food on a daily basis. But they all like meatballs. So my meatballs are my central ingredient. So right in the middle is my meatballs. My eldest son will eat pretty much everything except for cheese. So he'll have vegetables, he'll have mashed potato, he'll have Yorkshire pudding, and he'll have meatballs. Meatballs and Yorkshire puddings is a whole different conversation, but it happens in my house. So he'll have everything. My 15-year-old doesn't like any vegetables. They make him physically sick. He has an allergic reaction to a lot of fruits. So he's a bit of a nightmare in general because he has quite a lot of allergies. So he'll have just meatballs and Yorkshire puddings. My 13-year-old doesn't like mashed potato, not a big fan of vegetables. So he'll have chips and meatballs and Yorkshire puddings. My youngest son changes his mind about what food he likes. He's 10. He changes his mind about what food he likes as often as the wind changes, quite honestly. So he has whatever he fancies on that particular day, but he'll normally have either chips or mashed potato, some veg, and a Yorkshire pudding. Now, the reason I'm talking about that in terms of content is that my content are my meatballs right in the middle. How I deliver it is different for each child, and how I deliver that content should be different for each platform. So Instagram, I'm going to be a little bit more fun. I'm going to have more hashtags in there. I'm going to have a square photo, so maybe not so many meatballs on that one, but I need to make sure that it looks right. Same content, different delivery. On Facebook, I'm going to have a slightly longer story around it. I'm not going to use hashtags because they don't really go. Image needs to be a slightly different size. It's going to be 4 meatballs. And that's how I'm going to deliver it. For Pinterest, I need it to be long and thin. So I'm going to arrange the meatballs in a slightly different way. And I'm going to add something slightly different to it because I definitely want a link on my website to there to drive traffic back through to my website. I'm not really going to use hashtags because Pinterest has said that they don't use them anymore. So I'm going to be looking at it in a slightly different way. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Much easier to talk about that when I'm in a room of people and I can see maybe a couple of light bulbs going on, but hopefully that makes sense. Because yes, it's the same content, but I'm delivering each one differently based around the platforms and the platform's needs. So I'm looking at the technology, I'm looking at my audience, and I'm giving it a slightly different message. Sharing articles, blog posts, expertise, establishing yourself as a credible source is all a really good way of building a community and letting people know that they can come to you. And then finally, product-centric posts. And the reason I say finally is because this should be your lowest amount of time that you spend on social media in terms of building a community. Buy now does not build a community. Let me show you how to get the best out of this product, talking about the benefits, showing people what other products you've got available, talking about who you are as an organization, what your passions are, sharing something that you have in common with other organizations, sharing community stuff. So if you're a local business, sharing something about a local fair, local fireworks night, all those kinds of things, that should all come first. Now that can be really difficult when you're time restricted, because what you want to do is use your time on social media to shout about how great you are. Yeah, and to shout about how wonderful you are, how great the products are that you have, because you're really passionate about what you sell. But that doesn't turn your audience on and doesn't build a community. The other stuff does. So ideally aim for about 80-20. So 80% should be about your other stuff. It can come back round to what you do. So you could talk about, for example, if you sell vegan-based products, you could talk about the benefits of a vegan diet. Oh, and to supplement that, we also sell vegan products. Yeah, but you're not talking about the fact that you sell vegan products first. You're giving priority to something else, because that's much more engaging than, I know you sell vegan products. Stop telling me you do. It gets a little bit boring. You become the friend on Facebook or Instagram that nobody really wants to know, because it's a picture perfect life with the perfect husband, the perfect kids, with the perfect holiday on the perfect sunset with the perfect cocktail. That's not my life. I'm not really engaging in that very much. I'm engaging in the other stuff. So some top tips in terms of building a community is to be responsive. You should always, always, always respond to comments. Yeah, so even if it's something that doesn't seem very nice, always respond with a polite message. Even if it's just, oh, looks fab, always respond with a message. And I always liken this to real life. If you own a bricks and mortar store and a customer comes in, they have a browse and they say, oh, I love all the products you've got. They're just so lovely. I just love being in here. You wouldn't go and walk away from them. You'd talk to them, you'd have a conversation with them. And that's what you should be doing on social media. So if somebody takes time out of their day to leave you a review, go back to them, thank them personally, make sure that they know it's really appreciated. If somebody comments on one of your posts, go back to them and comment back, have a conversation, start a conversation, treat them as if they were in the same room as you. Be consistent. Consistency and regularity is really important to all of the algorithms. What we can very much fall into a trap of is we'll do lots of stuff, then because we're really excited about it, then nothing really seems to happen. So we stop doing it for a little bit, or something happens and we go on holiday for a week, then we come back and we think, oh, I haven't done anything on social media for a while, so we'll do a couple of other things. And then it doesn't work. And we can't understand why. But the reason it doesn't, or one of the reasons that it's not working, is because you don't have the consistency and regularity that all of the algorithms feed off. Now, when I say consistent and regular, I don't mean Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at X time, but I do mean that you need to be consistent in the quality of content and the regularity. So if you post 2 or 3 times a week on Facebook, then keep to 3 or 4 times a week. If you post every day on Instagram, that's fine. Keep it to that. One of the best ways to create a community is to be honest about who you are, who it is that you are as a business, as an organization, what you believe in, because that will come across in your content and it will make you much more likable to the right people. And if there are people who don't like that, then they're not your customers anyway. So don't worry about that. And create your own community, whether that's with groups, whether that's around certain hashtags on Instagram, whatever that is. Think about your community as being your prized possession, that they need a little bit of love and attention. So post regularly and always analyze your top performers. And on things like Facebook now, you get the opportunity to have top fans. So reward your top fans. Yeah, reward your top fans, even if it's just with a little bit of recognition. Then look at those. Just a couple of content examples here for you from a mix of bigger and, well, slightly bigger and smaller companies. So you've got Scallop and Bell showing you, I love a bit of mustard. So it's talking about the fashion trends, brightens up an outfit. You can buy all those bags on the right-hand side from Scallop and Bell. That's not particularly obvious. She's not saying buy mustard, it's in fashion, buy now, buy now. She's doing it in a much more subtle way. And then you've got a couple of things on the right where they're talking about lockdown. So they're talking about the difficulties that people are having at the moment. The one on the top right is an example from So Sally again, where she's done some NHS gift bags to hand out, and she's asked her customers to donate for those. But it's just about, if your audience are talking about it, then you should be talking about it. If your audience have an interest in fashion, then talk about London Fashion Week. Think about all of those things that you can be talking about. Couple of examples here from Instagram. On the right, you've got Mint Velvet, a personal favorite of mine. I love the look of their Instagram account. It always looks very clean and very fresh, which is obviously something that and very cuddly, which is kind of obviously the look that they go for. That it's all that kind of like, you know, relaxed glamour type stuff that they go for. I'm actually wearing Mint Velvet today, which isn't really a surprise because I have quite a lot of it in my wardrobe. And then on the left, you can see that it's a small retailer. So this is a small retailer based in Birmingham where they put together outfits. Now, this small retailer also has a secret gym bar underneath it, which is brilliant. You have to phone up for a password. So it's very kind of speakeasy, which is really good. But their social media for the top part of that, where they have all their clothes and they are a retailer, they put together outfits, they show different looks, they then tag those different ones in there. You can shop through there as well, so you can click through for it. And then a couple of examples from Pinterest. So Pinterest, we like kind of top tips. So this one, 7 casual Valentine's Day outfits, for example. 5 ways of, 5 ways of keeping the kids entertained in lockdown. All of those kinds of things that you can talk about, that you can encourage people to be involved with. COS, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to, COS retailer used to do a monthly promotion where they asked you to create a board with a certain name on it, and then they would track the number of people who were using that name. And you won whatever you put on your board as kind of like your summer edit or your spring edit, to kind of pull together ideas, and you would win all the contents of that board. So that's it in terms of content. Obviously, I'm going to be here for questions now. And as I promised you at the start, we have got a really special offer. We've got a 30-minute digital marketing consultancy session that's available for free. You can use this for whatever you want within digital marketing, but we only have 5 spaces available for this. We're only offering 5 for any of the free webinars that we're doing at the moment. So if you want one of those 5 spaces, email quickly because they do get filled up quite quickly. And that's charlotte@socialbee.co.uk. If you want to find out more about what we do, and what we are is obviously digital marketing experts, so hints and tips for how to use different platforms, different technology that's around, any changes that the algorithms make, those kinds of things, then by all means sign up for our newsletter on our website, socialbee.co.uk. And we've also got a couple of other special offers on there at the moment. So we are offering a digital marketing strategy template for £95.99. You can also top that up with a consultancy as well on the top of that. So we're offering a discounted rate consultancy on one of those as well. So by all means, have a look at our website. And then over to questions. So Suze has obviously joined us again. So hi, Suze, and I'm happy to answer the questions that I can. While I'm doing those questions, we would love any feedback. As an organisation, we thrive on the stuff. I always ask for feedback, always happy to make changes or to do things differently. So there's a QR code there or a bit.ly link that you can click through to while I'm answering some questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think there'll be a lot of people who found that really helpful. We've had a lot of questions. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to pick out a few, but if we don't answer all of them, we'll try and get a content piece, or we'll email the other ones that we don't get round to and send them out. So there's a few quick questions, Amy. We had a lot of very quick fire questions come through.
Okay.
Number one was, what was the name of your women's group that you talked about when you were talking through Facebook?
It's called The Connection for Women in Business, but connection is spelt slightly oddly, which gives us all kinds of problems. But it's CONNEXION for Women in Business. And anyway, if you're a woman and you're in business, you're more than welcome to join us there. It's good fun in there. We have good fun.
Okay, great. Another question that came through, this was with regards to Facebook. So if somebody has a business profile but a personal username, does that matter?
No, because they should still be separate. So to be able to have a Facebook business page, you have to have a personal profile to be able to create one. But after that, they stay fairly separate.
Okay.
If you really want to make sure that they're as far apart as possible, then you can use Facebook Business Manager, which is one of their free tools, and that kind of puts you a step removed again. So if you were working with somebody like an agency or a VA or something like that, where they were helping you manage your social media, you can give them access to it without having to be friends on Facebook.
Okay, great. A lot of technology recommendations, actually. So are there any platforms that you can schedule Instagram stories with as well as just grid posts? I know somebody mentioned Later, but I don't know if you have any other recommendations.
I don't, to be honest with you, because I don't do an awful lot of scheduling myself. I'm more than happy to shelve that and to come up with some of the possible recommendations, maybe at a later date, or if people want to email me, I'm more than happy to do it that way. There's nothing that I'm aware of for specifically for Instagram stories. You can do Instagram TV through Creator Studio, but stories are something that I think that they still want to keep as live as possible. So I don't know what the options are within things like Buffer. I only ever personally do stories live, kind of natively, if you like, so there and then. So I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if there is one or isn't, I'll be honest, but I'm happy to look into it.
That's okay. I have another question. So is Pinterest worth doing if you're a local clothing or a small store without e-commerce?
It depends how much time you've got on your hands. I'll be honest, if you've got lots and you've got, then yes, great. It's not as easy to do from a local perspective because it tends to be much more global and much more e-commerce based. But it can be quite a good way of, and a lot of it would depend on your demographic as well, to be honest with you. So if you had the right demographic, so slightly older female, then it's quite a good way of asking them to pin boards together, offering prizes, getting them involved that way, kind of staying in there, kind of keeping them in your net, if you like, and encouraging them and getting them involved with the stuff that you do. But if you're not e-commerce and you don't have a huge amount of time, I'd probably say no. If you were to go e-commerce, then definitely.
Okay, great. Another Pinterest question. When creating Pinterest boards, should you repin other people's content to create boards, or should the images be your own? Is there a recommended split? What would you recommend?
There isn't a recommended split as far as I'm aware. What I would say is that if it isn't your expertise, so for example, with the Connection Group again, I feel like I'm plugging it and I'm honestly not. I love it. So it's a big part of my life. But with the Connection Group, for example, all of the stuff on our Inspirational Women board is all pinned from other people. Yeah, so there's nothing on there that we've created uniquely or original, but it's been pinned from somewhere. I haven't downloaded it and claimed it as my own. I have repinned it because that's all about being part of the community. Same for our home office inspiration, same for, we had a board about Easter, looking at all the different things you could make and do for Easter and that kind of stuff. All of that came from somebody else. Our boards are the ones that look at our venues, that talk about our blogs, that talk about the things that we create, and the subjects that we look at and those kinds of things. But you definitely need a mix because you need to be part of the community, and it's all repinned stuff from other people that's driven traffic through to our website.
Okay, great. I have a question here on Facebook. So what is the best way of creating Facebook ads? Do you have any tips or tricks on that?
I don't. In terms of advertising, whatever advertising you're doing, it can be the quickest way to lose a lot of money and not get anything out of it. However, there are lots of things that you can do to make sure that that isn't the case. One is to make sure that you are absolutely crystal clear on your audience so that you know exactly who it is that you want to talk to and that you've really thought it through rather than just clicking boost and kind of going for it, if that makes sense. So make sure that you know who your audience are, really do research in that. What other things are they interested in? How else could you target them? Think about lookalike audiences. Think about your Facebook pixel, if you haven't got that already integrated into your website. Integrate that into your website so that you can do remarketing and retargeting, which is a really effective and probably slightly better cost basis on there. There isn't any way in particular. Obviously, you'd need to do it through something like Business Manager, but there isn't any other way to do it as such, other than obviously if you wanted to work with somebody like us at Social Bee, where we will run campaigns for you. The other thing I would say in terms of Facebook advertising is make sure that you split test regularly as well. So run campaign A with this photo and this text, run campaign B with the same photo and a different text, same time, same budget, run it side by side and see which one gets best. If A is clearly getting more engagement than B, then stop B, go back to A, and then with A, kind of tweak something else. So maybe put a slightly different text in there, run the original A with the new version of A, run them side by side, see which one works better, and kind of constantly adapt. One of the things you definitely don't want to do with Facebook ads is just leave a campaign to run, and then at the end of the campaign, see if it's worked or not. You need to be constantly monitoring to make sure that it is working, and if it isn't working, put the brakes on.
Great. Quite a few questions around building audiences. Both how there was one comment I think from Richard, who mentioned that he was posting all of the time, but he felt like he was talking to himself.
Okay.
And added to that, I think the question is, how do you build those audience organically? And how is it worth investing in influencers in order to grow that following?
Okay, growing an audience organically takes time. For all businesses now, everything that you can do organically takes longer and seems to take longer. Obviously, Facebook is a bit of a cash cow to some degree, so it's very much about advertising and that kind of stuff, and the income that they can generate from it. However, for not very much budget, you could grow your following in terms of followers. But what I would also say is don't get too hung up on the number of followers that you have. What's actually more important is that you have engaged followers. So I'd rather have 500 engaged followers than 10,000 who just don't give a monkey's what I'm doing and never react to me and never see anything and never like, comment or share. And if you're not getting any engagement, then I would work on engagement rather than numbers, because if you get the engagement right, the follower numbers will come anyway, because the more your audience are engaged, the more that their audience will see that they're engaged, and the more other people are likely to join you. And the more engagement you get, the more you are likely to appear in people's feeds organically anyway, because Facebook see you as being of a higher value. What was your other question, sorry?
Whether or not to invest in influencers to grow organic reach.
Thank you. Yeah, influencers do have an important place. However, with any influencers, you need to make sure that your audience matches really, really well. If you're approached by somebody, or if you approach somebody, make sure that your audiences are very aligned. So I think one of the really good examples of influencers was Deliciously Ella and Neal's Yard Remedies did a collaboration where they have absolutely the right kind of audience, very much healthy living, vegan, animal free, paraben free, all those kinds of things. Both sides of those have a very, very similar audience, similar age group, similar spend, similar background, similar marketing bands and all that kind of stuff. So that collaboration can work really, really well. But your audience has to be aligned. It can't just be because they take a fancy to what it is that you do. So you need to make sure that you do your research properly first before you do embark on anything with influencers. But there's definitely a market for it. But if that audience doesn't align, no matter how much somebody shouts about you, there's no point.
Okay, this one has come up a lot. I think maybe like eight or 9 questions about the same thing. Okay. So it's around, what are your thoughts on using the same content across all platforms? How would there be a negative or a positive impact if that happens at the same time? Or what are your thoughts around using that same content?
I would say, I said with my meatballs analogy, talking about meatballs again.
Yeah.
But as I was talking about the meatball analogy, yes, you can use the same content at the very heart, but you can't cut and paste across everything. So you need to talk about it slightly differently, taking into account the different platforms, the different language and all that kind of stuff. And what I would also say is I don't see much point in putting it on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest all at the same time, same day, same hour of the day. Stagger it and mix it up a little bit. Unless it's time specific, so Flash Friday sale, Fiverr Friday or whatever it is, if you're doing a special promotion and you need it to go out because you need that urgency across all platforms, then I would keep it separate. Yeah, so I would maybe do Facebook on a Monday, Instagram on a Wednesday, or an Instagram story on the Wednesday. And lots of people use lots of different platforms. So a lot of women, for example, will use Facebook and Instagram. So if you put it out on Facebook and Instagram on the same day, I can't be on both platforms at the same time. So if I'm on Facebook on the Monday, I might be on Instagram the next day or later in the afternoon. So I'm more likely to see it if you stagger it than if you put it all out on all platforms all at the same time. It's also, it also kind of feels a little bit cut and pasty because it saves time, but it doesn't bring you any rewards by doing it. So what you save in time, you lose in engagement.
Okay, there's another question around this. So how do you continue to have a conversation with your community when it's extremely large? So when you've gone through the stage of building up all of your audiences and it gets to an unmanageable number, do you have any recommendations for keeping that conversation going?
It depends where it is or how it's being managed. So if, for example, it's on Facebook and you've got a really large group, then I would look at maybe working with some of those people in that group to work as advocates for you. So your people who are super fans or something similar to that, to kind of get them involved in at a higher level, whether that's through a free product or, you know, that kind of thing, a special discount code or something like that, where you can kind of ask them to get involved with it a little bit more, maybe to be editors on that account, so that there's another voice and there's somebody else moderating it, because it can take an awful lot of your time to be there all the time. But also then think about the content that you're sharing, that the audience having a conversation with each other isn't a bad thing. You don't have to be in the Facebook group all of the time and listen to every single comment and respond to every single comment in the group in the same way, as long as it's active. But you do need to have a watchful eye in there, a moderator or something like that. If it's on your Facebook page and you've got a really large audience, then it is hard work, but it's whether or not it's bringing rewards. So if you've got a really large audience, but they're not engaged in the way that you need them to be, i.e. they're not buying products, they're not converting to customers, then I'd spend my time looking at that and seeing how I can convert them to customers out of that community, because that's really what it is that you're looking for. Same on Instagram. If you've got a really large following on Instagram, then you need to be monitoring your hashtags. You need to be looking to see who's using your hashtag. You need to be still a part of that community. But again, are they converting? Because if they're not converting, then that's what you should be concentrating on. Rather than just managing it, you need to be using it once you've got it to that stage to actually convert into customers for you.
Okay, great. I've just completely lost where I was up to with my questions because I started looking at the chat. Give me 2 seconds. We've had a lot of questions about LinkedIn and Twitter. Obviously, they're not 2 platforms that we've touched on today. Yeah. But do you have any general advice for what content would work best on those? Is it more news driven, or is it that personal content that really engages on those particular platforms?
It's a little bit of a mix. Twitter is very much a B2B and B2C environment, so it kind of sits very much in the middle, but its very nature is that it's a very chatty and it works and it moves a lot quicker than anything else. So with Twitter, whereas you might want to post on Facebook 2 or 3 times a week, you'd be looking at 2 or 3 times a day on Twitter. I think from a management perspective, it's one of the platforms that takes the most time, in that you have to be there more regularly and more frequently, because it just moves so fast, because it is very conversational. And I think with Twitter, it is about joining that conversation. So joining in, following hashtags, looking for ways into a conversation, looking at who's following your competitors and what are they talking about. Can you start a conversation that would draw them towards you? Can you nudge a couple, stop following them, that kind of stuff. So it's quite chatty. So I would say not as professional and chatty. And kind of, I always think of it as being a little bit like water cooler talk. Yeah, so it's kind of the stuff that's going on in the office in the background that everybody's kind of earwigging on, but not really a part of. That's a little bit like Twitter is. LinkedIn is obviously much more formal. And LinkedIn is definitely a combination of professional page and your personal professional profile on there. Everybody uses professional with a professional head on. So when I'm on Facebook, I'm on there as a mum, a sister, a friend, you know, all those kinds of things. When I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on there as a digital marketing trainer and speaker. So it's a very different environment because I'm on there with my professional headset. They've made some changes recently to make it slightly more chatty, to you know, introducing, you know, birthday announcements and all that kind of stuff. Not really working at the moment. Your page is definitely a news updates, those kind of things. So talking about any awards, any professional awards, any updates for you as a business, new projects, exciting news, all those kinds of things that you would be talking about. From your personal profile, it's about establishing your credibility as an expert within your industry. So it's then sharing content, commenting on other people's content, being a part of the professional level of conversation, whereas on Twitter it's a little bit more personal. On LinkedIn, you can track hashtags, you can join in conversations, but it's very much with your professional face.
So you mentioned hashtags. We've had a lot of questions around this in terms of is there such a thing as too many hashtags? How would you recommend that some of our attendees kind of use hashtags on different platforms? Is there a limit? Is there some platforms it works really well for? And obviously hashtags aren't used on Pinterest. Do you have any insight as to why they don't use those?
I'll start with Pinterest. On Pinterest announced recently, a couple of months ago, start of the year, I think, that Pinterest are no longer have the same functionality, and they're not developing the functionality for hashtags, which is why they're not necessary. They've never really been a big part of hashtags. Hashtags have never been a big part of Pinterest conversation anyway. That's why I wouldn't recommend them on Pinterest. Twitter, yes, definitely about the hashtags. Normally recommend 2 to 3 per tweet, and no more than that. But the difference is with Twitter is that you would put them in the sentence, or in the tweet. So today I am delivering a hashtag webinar on hashtag digital marketing in hashtag London. Yeah, so you include it within the sentence rather than at the end, and no more than 3 at the very most. On LinkedIn, they go at the end. They kind of encourage you to put them in at the end more than anything else. They've only been around about a year and a bit. Not a huge amount of data in terms of how popular they are. But if you do some searches for hashtags, you can see how popular some of them are. And some of them have millions of followers. So there's definitely conversation happening around them. So I would normally put no more than 3 or 4 in a LinkedIn update. And this is the case with all hashtags, no matter what platform you're on, is you have to make sure that they are relevant, and that they are completely relevant to the context, to the text, to the image, that if somebody clicks through on it, they're not going to go to something that isn't related to what you're talking about, or if somebody uses a hashtag to click through to your content, that it is relevant to that particular hashtag. Instagram is obviously very much about the hashtag. You can use up to 30. I very often get into arguments with people about whether or not you should use 30. My belief is that you shouldn't. If you look at some of the Instagram stats, they'll tell you that Instagram posts with between 8 and 10 get a higher engagement rate as a general rule. So 10, I would say, is an absolute maximum. And also, and this is what I was saying about it being relevant, I would challenge anybody to find me 30 hashtags that were completely relevant to the message and the image that we were using. I have run that challenge a couple of times in training sessions with people who don't believe me, and they've found it really difficult. Hashtag love is not relevant to every image and every text. It's also got nearly 2 billion uses, I think, at the last time I checked it. You're in a very, very noisy environment. You're not going to be heard. Using ones that are specific to you. So what I would normally say on Instagram is 1 or 2 that are specific to you. So life at wherever, or your company name, as long as somebody else isn't using it, obviously. So a couple that are specific to you, maybe 1 or 2 that are specific to the industry that you're in. So somebody who, so if we were on Instagram talking about digital marketing, for example, something that was hashtag digital marketing, and then another 5-ish that are relevant to the image and the text specifically. It may be more niche, you may not get as many people using it, you may not get as many people click through. However, there will be a higher conversion because they're more relevant for that particular hashtag. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit more on hashtags and how you can use them.
That's great. Thank you, Amy. I think we've gone over the hour and we've still got quite a few questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through after this webinar and answer those. And so look out for blogs. Also please do look out for our email that we'll send to everyone to ask us some feedback as well. We've popped a few short polls in the poll section here. So if you could just quickly tick those, take 2 seconds Watkins. That's so helpful for us. But I just want to thank Amy. Thank you so much. It's been such a great session. We've had so much amazing feedback in the chat. And I'm sure, as many of people have posted, we have a session next week on Instagram. So please, we'll send through the link in case you want to join us for any of those. But thank you so much, Amy, for your time, and thank you to everyone for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.